The year is 2019. Jump King was just released, and it kinda destroyed Twitch. Everyone from XQC to Ludwig to PewDiePie was playing this game, and everyone sucked at it. It'd be very surprising to see one of these content creators even get to the end of the game without giving up completely. And this isn't for lack of trying, mind you. This game is just built different, which is why I can't wait to tell you about its speedrunning history and the one man that absolutely changed the game. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Jump King, let me give you a rundown. For a game with jump in its name, you have surprisingly little control on how you can jump. Most platformers, like Mario and Celeste, allow you to move while you're in the air. But in Jump King, once you leave the ground, you can't control the character until it hits the ground again, meaning that this is an inevitability. This is one of the reasons that the speedrun is so interesting. The movement is extremely precise, and the only way to have a better time is to do these pinpoint jumps faster than everyone else. However, there is a huge obstacle in Jump King that directly affects how fast you can beat the game. Wind. Out of 9 total areas in the game, Storm Wall Pass is the 6th, and it introduces a new mechanic in the form of a wind cycle. 6.5 seconds to the right, 6.5 seconds to the left, from the moment you start the run. If a runner is even a few seconds late to the cycle, they will have to lose 13 whole seconds before they can start the screen. To avoid this, runners have to catch the earliest possible cycle so they can be on pace. At the beginning of Jump King speedrunning, the earliest cycle thought to be doable by humans was at 2 minutes and 42 seconds, and thus was called the first cycle, or simply the one cycle. The interesting thing about these cycles is that as long as you're catching the same cycle, each run will exit Stormwall Pass at the exact same time. And since the one cycle was the best they could do, they had to get really fast at the parts after it. So, for the months after the game's release, that's what people did. They got super consistent with the final 3 sections, and eventually the first record was set. On May 18th, 2019, Swift got a 5:27, but that didn't last long. By the end of July, and after about a dozen world records back and forth, it was taken down to a 4:42 by Crep. A month later, a time of 4:35 was set by Cookie Crisp. At that point, progress had kinda stalled. There weren't any more records for the rest of 2019, and no one was making real progress on finding other strats. It seemed like the game couldn't be pushed any further. At least until January 18th, 2020, when Cookie Crisp was able to hit a 0 cycle. He got to the wind by 2:29, which meant he was able to grab a faster cycle, and more importantly, exit Stormwall Pass 13 seconds faster than anyone else before. This was the biggest development in Jump King speedrunning yet, and it opened up a massive wave of motivation for the community. Over the next year, runners like Nye, Rustamaniac, Leuman, HTY, and Trimp were trading records like crazy. Everyone was grinding all the time. But by November 2020, the records became less and less substantial, sometimes only shaving off less than a second. After November, 5 months went by without a record. Runners had hit a wall with how fast they could jump. But if you've been paying attention, you could probably figure out the only way to go faster. An even faster wind cycle. But this next one seemed impossible to catch. Runners needed to get to Stormwall by 2:16, but even after 5 months, even the fastest runs were about 7 seconds late. This elusive negative cycle looked like it would never be achievable by runners. But that didn't stop them from trying. One of the runners who traded records in 2020, Trimp, was trying something new. He had a vision of a way to catch the 2:16 wind cycle. And together with another runner, Curb Knight, they developed a strategy. Instead of doing the normal route, and catching the wind cycle at 2:16. He is able to show up 2 seconds later at 2:18 and do some very risky and precise jumps to be able to catch up to the 2:16 cycle. The difference in the new strat starts pretty quickly. On the transition from screen 1 to screen 2 of Stormwall Pass, you jump right instead of left. The rest of screen 2 is the same, but screen 3 is basically entirely different. The first jump is a lot earlier, and the second jump is a frame-perfect jump to the next platform. And by frame-perfect, I mean frame-perfect. If you hold the button for a frame too long, you will miss the jump and fall. Hold it for a frame too little, you land too far to the right and can't transition screens without bonking. Both of these will lose you at minimum 13 seconds on the run. No one else was really going for this, just Trimp. It just didn't seem to be that feasible of a strat. And after 6,000 run attempts and hours upon hours of gameplay, it seemed a little unlikely that Trimp would be able to do the 2:18 skip. So other runners like HTY started grinding for the negative cycle using a different 2:17 strat instead of Trimp's current route. But even HTY was finding troubles catching the cycle, and the prospect of the negative cycle seemed to be too far out of reach. Well, that's until March 14th, 2021, where Trimp did this. His timing is great. He crushes the frame-perfect jump. He catches up with the cycle, and then he simply finishes it out. Trimp became the first Jump King runner to ever catch the negative cycle. He absolutely changed the game for this run and has solidified himself as the GOAT of Jump King. If you need more proof to back up this achievement, this run was almost 2 years ago now, and only 5 other people in the entire world have been able to catch the negative cycle like this. It's one of the most hyped things I've ever seen in speedrunning. But that's not even where it ends. For some reason, Trimp wasn't satisfied. He kept grinding away. And a year and a half after he made Jump King history, he did it again. On September 23rd, 2022, he became the one and only person to ever catch the negative cycle naturally. He didn't have to do the fancy 2:18 strat. He got to Stormwall Pass by 2:16, just in time for the cycle to start. And then he followed it up with one of the best Final 3 area performances ever, for a final time of 4 minutes and 2 seconds. And that's where the Jump King world record stands today, in the hands of the Jump King GOAT. I personally am very excited to see what comes next, and who will be the first person to get a sub 4 minute time. I don't know if it's even possible, but it wouldn't be the first time Jump King speedrunners have broken a seemingly impossible barrier.